I mean, hip hop as a art form and as a genre has reached every single corner of the world. We are seeing Black Italians rapping. We're seeing Black Koreans rapping. We are seeing the art form, as we know, has a heavy bass drum, or have the heavy bass that's in there that represents the African drum in many ways. But we are now seeing Africans rapping like we are, right? And in many ways, repackaging that bass that we appreciate so much.
Let's embark on the Ark Republic to hear current news that's published. More than gossip and chatter, covering current affairs that matter. We talk issues with professional views, all keeping you in queue. We wanted a higher vibe for these days and times, to free the voices and minds, reporting the sign of the times, so all can build. Let's shine, yeah.
So recently, the newly inaugurated mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, put like a quasi hit out or ban, or definitely said that drill music, which is another subgenre of hip hop, was one of the reasons why there is like a spike in criminal activity amongst the youth, and but wanted to do some kind of ban on it in social media. There was a huge backlash from the hip hop community about it, and he kind of like backtracked, and there was some meetings at City Hall to discuss about it. But the overarching conversation that I want to have with you is Black music as political discourse.
Yes.
Because it is only Black music, or music made by Black folk, that comes under this type of scrutiny. From rock and roll, which was Black, jazz, which is Black, all of these genres. What are your thoughts? Did you hear about that? But in general, what is this Black as political discourse? Especially also since you had the Super Bowl halftime show, and it was
you took the words out of my mouth.
Oh,
okay. and so I want to start at the Super Bowl and then back into Eric and this foolishness in New York. So I want to start with the Super Bowl because I remember I looked over to my husband when 50 Cent came out with Go Shawty. And I said, oh yeah, they picked the most sanitized rap that white folks was gonna love. I said they were very strategic in doing that, and I said, but they were also militant in choosing people like Kendrick Lamar,
who was, they said that his rhyme has got censored. There were some things he couldn't say, right?
Oh no! And if you heard him, he took out "And We Hate Popo." Want to kill us dead in the street for sure. That part of the lyric was not said, right? But I thought, even having "We Gonna Be All Right" as political speech. If anybody goes back and looks at the lyrics of that song, "We Gonna Be All Right," it's extremely provocative and speaks directly to Black people's feelings about the government and the way that the government shapes their lives, right? It is directly political speech. So even the idea of that song to be on the Super Bowl, censored or not, was to me like, right? Or when Snoop Dogg showed up with all of his quote unquote gang paraphernalia, right? It
trying
was
to look like
down.
Nipsey Hussle. R.I.P. Right. Great Nip. Okay, I'm sorry. I was like, what is this? Is he trying to look like Nipsey? No. Okay, I'm sorry. Oh,
it was watered down, but it just reminded me of the fact that Black folks, even in the quote unquote coon space, are gonna find a way to then show some level of resistance. They're just not gonna be totally complicit, right? Eminem took a knee when they told him not to, right? So I'm bringing that up to say that there is then the mainstream of rap that's then acceptable to be on the Super Bowl show, right? And then there is this underbelly of rap that is regional, right? Bounce music in New Orleans, right? The sounds of southern California versus Northern California, right?
Trap.
trap music or snap music in the southern states, like in Georgia. It has political messages, very high political messages, although people don't like to acknowledge them. And then drill music, right? That's in New York. And so the idea
in Chicago, it comes out of Chicago, right?
Thank you. Please correct me. You're exactly right. It does come out of Chicago, and of course is then used right in New York, right, because of then the cultural context, right? Chicagoans, most Chicago or Chicago, as they call it, North Mississippi, right? And then New York and the New York area, you're seeing the migrations of Black folks from North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia in particular. And so that common shared thread of migration into those areas, and then that political struggle is shared, that's very much identical because of the cultures that they are a part of in Chicago and then there in New York. And so I thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate that. But with that being said, it is then, of course, the need for a Black man to come out and ban it, right? We didn't say Bill Blasio coming out and saying anything about drill music, right? It's then the use of our own then to politically silence the underbelly, right? If because 50 Cent is from the New York area, right? If you talk about Go Shawty, we good. But as soon as you're starting to talk about the underbelly or the regional understandings of what the genre was originated over to speak truth to power in this art form, then you get in trouble. And so I'm not surprised. Eric has been getting hit after hit after hit. Eric's first hit was, "Oh, you don't really live in one of the boroughs," right? Like all of that. So Eric's has been attacked mightily, and I think that's by design. I think that is by design because I didn't think many people thought that Eric was going to be able to be successful with so many other Black candidates in the pool. But I think the use of ranked choice voting actually helped Eric in being able to rise to that position. And so I think this is an example of them using one of our own to politically silence us.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Ark Republic. If you like what you see and you like what you hear, you can actually keep this mothership going. How? You can make a tax-deductible donation in several ways. One, Cash App us at Ark Republic Media. And you can also go on our website, arkrepublic.com/donate. As well, you can also donate to our fiscal sponsor and our sister organization at Black Farmers Index, that is Cash App, or also go onto their website, blackfarmersindex.com. We are two Black women-owned media organizations who share our profits so folk can thrive.
Right, and I because my hope is that there are younger folk, there are other folk who are listening to talk about just the critical space or articulation that music has had in America, period, in cultures around the world. But let's talk about, I mean, you've traveled all over the world. In Italy for the 2 years, I heard some of the best hip hop that I don't even hear on the channels in the United States.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, hip hop as a art form and as a genre has reached every single corner of the world. We are seeing Black Italians rapping. We're seeing Black Koreans rapping. We are seeing the art form, as we know, has a heavy bass drum, or have the heavy bass that's in there that represents the African drum in many ways. But we are now seeing Africans rapping like we are, right? And in many ways, repackaging that bass that we appreciate so much. Let's think about it. The entire headphone industry has changed due to the fact that Dr. Dre created some headphones that allowed then for the bass versus the treble to be the focus in how you listen to music. Why? Because Black folks, especially Black Americans, have then thrown up, I would like to say, on then what music means. Even if you think rock and roll, the even the guitar, the bass guitar is then pushing that genre, right?
It's the heartbeat.
Is the heartbeat, and it's consistently and has consistently been that heartbeat. And so music as an art form, when it comes to Black people, is at the heart of who we are. And that is why it is important to have a politically conscious music, especially in regional tones. And what I mean by regional tones is that speaks to the oppression that Black people are facing in that region. Oppression in Louisiana does not look like oppression in New York. Oppression in South Central LA does not look like oppression in Northern Florida, right? And so those art forms, especially those regional ones, are important because they tell a story that is specialized to a region and to the set of oppression and the expression of worthlessness that's attached to that oppression.
And there's so much we could say. I know we are running out of time, and we have to continue this conversation with the other brothers that are coming. But just a couple of notes. You had my mind spinning when you were talking. Several things I want to say. What happened in New York, particularly, is what they call a moral panic, which is the establishment says that this genre of cultural expression or activity will somehow impact criminalize the public.
Well, you remember this though. We've had this moral dilemma over Uncle Luke. Right?
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
This is not anything new. We had this entire thing with Uncle Luke, and because Uncle Luke was
gangster rap, Uncle Luke. We could go down the whole line.
But Uncle Luke, I love Uncle Luke as an example because Uncle Luke took them all the way to court and said, "You are violating my First Amendment rights. Y'all believe in these Bill of Rights so tough, right? Well, the first one says I have freedom of speech, and so if the first one says that we have freedom of speech, and the reason that I love the Uncle Luke the example for this moral turnback is we have to remember that the Bill of Rights were the first 10 amendments to the Constitution immediately after the Constitution was ratified, because anti-federalists, essentially slave owners, said we need some assurances and we're going to cloak them in this moral framework. And so then our usage of the First Amendment to the Constitution to then pull back the covers on what they're then posturing as morality is classic to me, and I love it every time we see it. And I think in many ways this is what's been brought out in this drill music conversation is, are we on the heels of violating everyone's First Amendment rights? And is there any proof to the quote unquote criminalization element that you are speaking to? Or is it this rejection then of the idea that we are moving away from hip hop being an entertainment source that centers the sensibilities of white folks?
Good, excellent points. I'm gonna shift this to a political economics lens, right?
Absolutely.
So my husband and I were talking about drill and trap and everything. Actually, I was doing this. I did this whole thing on trap because I'm teaching a course on bounce and trap with a sister who's also going to do dance hall at NYU.
Oh yeah,
it's going to be
dance hall is huge too as a political.
And so that's another thing. I'm glad you said that. What a lot of people don't understand, our music talks to each other, right? These political messages. And so how people describe trap or perceive trap in the United States, and even like drill music, is different. See, in Africa and in Italy, in the poor places in Italy, they see trap as resistance music. They don't see it as, downgrade, kill Black people music. It is the language of the poor. It is the language of those who are struggling. What happened is, for us, I think one of the things is that we see the political discourse that goes on in trap and drill and these things like that. But that idea of breaking it down has been so extracted, from us understanding, all of the language that goes in there. And let me also say this in terms of the political economics. My husband brought up, well, you have to understand, trap is after the era of sampling. So there was a whole legal industry that emerged as a result of hip hop, and that was suing rap artists and labels for sampling music and not getting it cleared. That made a whole bunch of white people money, long story short. So the creative minds of the MCs, the musicians, and those who are in this industry is, well, how can I make music without sampling? Emerges trap. It emerges these very kind of simplified beats, but it honestly goes down to kind of like these maybe indigenous rhythms and melodies that
it's a lot of call and response though, right?
A lot of calling. Yes, here we go.
It's a lot of call and response, right? And so this is where me and my husband have it's so funny that you say this about your husband having the conversation, because my husband's from Macon, Georgia. We had this conversation and he said something that sparked me. He was like, when you're talking about like our regional rap talking back to one another, because he said he was so proud when Andre 3000 stood up and said the South has something to say, meaning that we've been left out of the political conversation with our music, and now we have something to say. And that was before the emergence really, or the mainstream idea of trap, if that makes any sense. But the idea of we have something to say here. We have something to say politically about what's happening to us. And so when we get into this economic piece, the thing that immediately sparks in my mind is that the simplification in many ways goes back to a church tradition, or a Black church tradition, of this call and response that then is actually taken out of the fields of working in the fields, right? So there is the work in the fields that then is translated into gospel music, that's now translated in to hip hop and trap, that's now become this full circle of then communication. And it's actually a tool that multiple generations are using. And here's why I know this to be true. Because when I was in Shreveport, I met one of my cousins, and she was talking about some trap music that she loved. And I was like, how do you, I think she was like, it's called That's My Drip. I think that's the name of the song. And she was explaining to me why she loved it. And I immediately saw why she loved it, because of the call and response, because of the messaging and the simplification of the repetitiveness of the message, and then what then the message meant then holistically, that then crossed generations. And I said, aha, now I understand the attack on it, because now I can then mobilize around something that then speaks to multiple generations.
And let me add to that. Added to the call and response, there is very much a church moment, because when you go to those old Black churches, you go, ha, you have those noises. You hear that? The music, right? You hear all that. And then also another thing is in terms of reclamation of our language, right? When we are enslaved and we are stripped of our language, because I acknowledge that we were brought over, but there were also people who were here. It's a combination of that, and you cannot talk the language, or you've got to talk the oppressor's language. You're not taught that in school, so you're adapting and trying to talk. So a bit knit, as you know, I'm saying, we know what that is. Does it come out right? So also reclaiming that type of linguistic style on those dialects where we cut off this, what I'm saying. So instead of saying excuse me, but a bitch ass nigga, we said bitch ass nigga.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like that stuff.
The syrupiness, right?
Yeah,
I told him, I said, I remember when I had first moved to Alabama, and girl, I heard, I said, what are they? Wait. I mean, I speak the King's English. I need some syllables in there. I don't know what's going on, right? Okay. And then as I got indoctrinated, as my mother and sister say, into the culture, I was like, hey, because I understood, right?
Yeah.
And there was a pulling, and this may sound ludicrous to some, but there was a pulling at my soul, if that makes sense, because I felt the thick nature, the heavy nature of it, and then the pushing back of needing to over enunciate to prove what to who exactly. And so it is definitely, I think, a larger conversation that I would love to hear your other panelists speak on. But I
Right.
think the biggest thing when you're talking about from an economic standpoint is that's another reason that I think that I said this. Let me say it this way. I said this in my speech down in Shreveport. As Black people, we're the creators. We're the only people that can take nothing and make it something, right? And so oftentimes white folks create structures or systems or processes that then take our creation and then those systems justify why they've taken said creation
and make money off of them.
and make money off of them, right? And I think that in many ways, this sampling is what that is. It is then the idea of you created it, right? I owned it. I owned your creativity because I owned your masters. And now, even the terminology of masters, right? I owned your masters. And since I am the master, you have to come back to the master to then use it again.
And then, my last thought is that drill is a continuum of a representation that how much you've made off of my creativity, you will never own my creativity. So you got blues, all right, we do jazz. You got jazz, we do rock and roll. You took rock and roll, we do disco. You do disco, we got hip hop. When you did hip hop, we got pop. Gangster rap. You took it all, and now we have drill. It's like mercury in a thermometer. Once it breaks and it spills out, you never can hold it. And that's Black people's creativity, and that's a power.
But I think that's their problem. I think that's their frustration, right?
Exactly.
That's their frustration. Their frustration is at every area of your life, we have tried to make it to the point that you'll give up. And instead of giving up, we just subvert the process one other time, and then we spill into another place. And this is why I think it goes back to the use of Eric as mayor to try to quell this. Because now I need one of your own to tell you it is unacceptable.
Well, we're going to end on that note. Thank you so much, Dr. Sherice J. Nelson, for an excellent conversation. I look forward to talking to you again and soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.